Hi, good morning. My name is Glenn Robertson and I am here with Maurice Gawronsky, one of the finest jazz drummers Cape Town has produced. Maurice Gawronsky, my history with Maurice goes back to 30 years ago when I married Michelle Saville at the Groot Constantia farm in Constantia, and the band on that night was Tony Schilder, Maurice Gawronsky, Gary Creel, and Leslie Klainsmith on vocals. And I just want to talk to Maurice a little bit about his history, where he's played, who he's played with, etc., etc. How did you start playing the drums? Did you start as a drummer, Maurice?
No. What happened is my father was the first jazz pianist to have ever played on the SABC.
What was his name?
Cecil Gawronsky.
Cecil Gawronsky,
Yeah.
wow.
And what happened is he had a grand piano, and every Sunday night his brothers and sisters and my mother's brothers and sisters used to come over, and we had this happen every Sunday evening. And he used to sit in front of the piano and he'd play, in those days, the sort of Fats Wallace songs that everybody loved.
Yes.
And they used to stand behind and they all used to sing. And what I did is I broke off a couple of branches of the tree outside the house, and he was very involved with antiques. And I used to take the antique plates and put it on top of the grand piano and get different sounds out of them. And that's actually how I started.
So you used to just play on the plates?
Absolutely, yeah.
Amazing.
That's how I started.
And when did you do your very first gig? At what age?
Well, I'll tell you what. I was about 14 years old, and there was a very famous club in Cape Town called the Navigator's Den.
I remember the name.
And this Navigator's Den at that time was very near to where the waterfront is today. And I used to, after school, I used to meet a few friends, and they wouldn't let us in because we were too young. But I then belonged to a little club which was an amateur wrestling club. And some of the big guys over there, I met them one night outside the Navigator's Den. And they said, "Why are you standing outside?" I said, "Well, I can't get in. I just listen to the music outside." "No, we'll take you in." They took me in. I was standing next to the bandstand, and the drummer who was playing was so drunk and fell off the drums. So I picked up the brush while they were playing, just quietly behind, and I just started hitting the cymbal.
Because you knew a little bit about it.
Yeah, I had that feel. And the next thing is, the piano player turned around and said, "Listen, that sounds right. Get on the drum stool and play." And I'd never sat behind drums before, and I just sat there and I played. And he booked me for a job the following week.
Wow.
And I didn't have any drums, so I rushed home and told my father. I said, "Listen, Dad, I must have a set of drums, you know."
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of everything.
Could you reveal who the drummer was, or would you not?
Oh, that's so many years ago. So many years ago. He must have been, yeah.
Do you remember the band that was playing?
No, I just remember that there was a piano player called Eugene Nicholas was the piano player.
Yes.
George Cussell was the bass player.
Wow.
These are the original jazz players that really started something in Cape Town.
Wow.
And this was the bebop days, and I'm talking about the early 50s. So it was very, very exciting.
Wow, amazing. And I've heard a little bird come and whisper or tweet in my ear saying that you played with a great Stan Getz. Is that true?
And how that happened.
Yes, and how did it happen?
Yeah, very, very strange story that. I was with a friend of mine who still lives here in Cape Town. The two of us went to a little place called Torremolinos in Spain.
Wow.
And in those days, Torremolinos had little cobbled streets, and there was only two little pensions, and all we did is just to relax from music, which I was doing a lot of in London. We used to walk down to the beach, lie on the beach, eat on the beach. One night coming back, we heard music coming out of one of these pensions. I couldn't believe it, and I ran inside, and I saw this band, a quartet playing over there, and people sitting around and listening, and I thought, this is quite an amazing situation, because in Spain in those days, nobody had even heard of jazz.
Yeah.
When the piano player, when they finished, the pianist walked past me and I said to him, I hear you listen to Horace Silver. And he said, you know Horace Silver? I said, no, I don't know him, but I said, I know his style, and you play a lot like him. He says, do you play? I said, yeah, I play drums. He says, will you come and play a blues with us? I said, yeah, sure, I'd like to. So I took the drummer's drums. He had about 8 tom-toms all around him, and I tuned them, and I did a whole long drum solo. And I felt I was in the middle of a bull ring.
Yeah.
And the holays and the people getting up, and a man came up to me and he said to me, excuse me, he said, who are you? So my friend, before I could say anything, said, this is Jack Parnell from the London Palladium. So the man said, oh my goodness, that's wonderful to have you. Next week we're having the American network television coming here, and we're having, Elizabeth Taylor will be here, and Cary Grant was there.
Goodness.
Enormous amount of names, and we'd like you to do a 2-minute spot for us.
Solo,
yeah. And I said, that'll be very nice, you know. And then eventually, the following week, I got to meet quite a few of these people who came out, these very well-known actors.
celebrities, yeah.
And I did this 2-minute spot, and then a man came up to me and he said, look, he said, can I introduce myself to you? So I said, yes. And he told me, he says, I'm Stan Getz's manager. And he says, I just like your playing. He's, at the moment, interviewing a new trio. So if you come to Copenhagen, you know, maybe he'd like to hear you, you see.
Wow.
So he said, what's your name? I said, Jack Parnell. He said, no, you're not. He says, I know Jack Parnell very well. So he said, what's your name? So I said, people said I play a lot like Jack Parnell, so my name is Maurice Gawronsky, and I'm from Cape Town, South Africa. The following day we left, this friend of mine and myself, and went to Copenhagen. And we went in and listened to Stan Getz playing with his band and everything, until this gentleman, and I can't remember his name, came through and he said to me, let me introduce you, and he introduced me. And we were asked to come to an audition with a piano player called Jan Johansson from Sweden and Danny Jordan from Detroit. And we did a rehearsal with Stan Getz, and then I still remember he played a song called 52nd Street Theme, which was a very up-tempo, and I picked up the sticks to play, and he stopped. He said, I didn't tell you to play sticks. When I tell you to play sticks, that's when you play it. Otherwise, you play brushes.
Wow.
And that was more or less the most he ever spoke to any of the band. His manager was the one who told us where and when and how. He didn't say hello, he didn't say goodbye. He was a very, very difficult man.
Are you
but
serious?
He was the most amazing, amazing musician to have worked with. Sure. And while I was there, because of that, the next person who came in was Oscar Pettiford, who was very, very well-known bass player and cellist, and I got to play with him, and then a fellow called Don Bias, another tenor player, also, and as I say, I'm talking of well over 50 years ago, so you must realize these were great names in the bebop world of many, many years ago. But yeah, that was my excitement that happened in Copenhagen, so instead of staying for a few days, I ended up staying there for 7 months, and learned the language, and I
and playing with Stan Getz.
Well, Stan Getz was one of them, but I worked with various
other musicians.
I worked in another, that was at the Montmartre Club, and then afterwards I went down to a club called the Vingården, and I worked at that club, and that was the local guys who were also superb players over there.
Fantastic.
So yeah, that was part of my life, but I always then rushed back to London again, because London, I felt that was my second home, London, because I went there for 3 months and stayed for 8 years. So,
you stayed 8 years in London? And so
travelling
around Europe. Now, coming back to Cape Town, South Africa, you have played with the who's who in jazz.
Most of the guys. Yeah.
You, as I said, you played at my wedding with Tony Schilder.
Right, that's right.
You've played, I'm sure, with Richard Schilder.
Oh, yes.
You've played with
Winston Mankunku.
Winston Mankunku.
Merton Barrow, you know, these were all very, very well-respected musicians.
Absolutely. And you spent some time at one of the hotels?
Mount Nelson.
With the
Alec Nocky, the late Alec Nocky.
And who was the piano player there?
He was the pianist, Alec
Okay,
Nocky.
and there was another gentleman that you mentioned early on, the white-haired guy?
Oh, Jerry Spencer.
Where's Jerry Spencer?
Jerry's in New Zealand at the moment. And also he was a superb backer of vocalists. He was the perfect man to back a vocalist.
Well, I remember coming to listen to you guys, and Esther Miller. Esther Miller used to sing up front. So Esther, if you listening to this clip, I also want to mention my uncle Harold Jefter. Have you had the opportunity?
Harold phoned me last night.
Are you serious?
Last night, and he asked me please to email him, and as you saw on my Facebook,
yes,
I'd emailed him, and he
fantastic.
Wants to come back. He wants to come back to his roots.
He wants to come back. In fact, Uncle Harold, if you are watching this clip, we are going to make every effort to try and get you here by December 2013, so that you and Maurice, and we'd love to get Maurice Goldberg. I've been calling Maurice Gawronsky, Maurice Goldberg. They both are Moji. And so Maurice Goldberg, if you ever watch this clip, we want to get you back to Cape Town as well. We'd love to get Harold Jefter, Arthur Gillies. We'd love to get you back to Cape Town as well. And all of the guys that are the expats from Cape Town, South Africa. When you do come back to Cape Town, go and listen to Maurice Gawronsky. He's at the Winchester Mansions at 11 o'clock every Sunday morning. For 14 years, the Winchester Mansions has been the place to be on a Sunday morning. They have the most incredible...
There are 17 different bands. Every Sunday there's a new band over there, and I work with each one of them.
Amazing.
So it's really very exciting. We try and get the best that we know, and get them over there, and it's such a success story.
Absolutely. I've had the honor of singing there on more than one occasion, and it's what a joy. And the crowd, the people love it. And I think you need to get directorship there. We need to speak to the owner. But Maurice is also going to be doing more at Kaleidoscope Jazz Cafe. I did something with Maurice's trio about 2-3 weeks ago, and it was wonderfully received. And I've spoken to Maurice about possibly coming back and becoming a little bit of an alternate group to the Glenn Robertson Jazz Band. And so we look forward to doing more of that. We also look forward to hosting his CDs, which he has produced. It's called Winchester at the Jazz at the Winchester Mansions. Jazz on a Summer's Day is Volume 2, and Volume 1 is, as he said, totally out of stock. Hopefully we're going to be replenishing stock, and we will have opportunities for you to purchase both Volume 1 and Volume 2. Just the artists that perform on Volume 1, you've got Maud Darmans.
That's right.
Who's now living in Italy or Spain?
She's back in England now.
Back in England.
Yeah. And Don Shamella, the late...
Donald Shamella.
The late Donald Shamella.
Very, very good blues singer.
The late Basil Moses.
The late Basil Moses.
Yeah. Well, Andrew Ford, of course, is on there. And... I can't even remember who else is on there. But
and Volume 2.
Oh yes, and
Volume 2.
Volume 2.
Who's on Volume 2?
Well,
Richard Caesar.
Offhand, yeah, Richard Caesar.
Ibrahim
Khalil.
Shihab.
Yeah. And Amy Campbell.
That's Mike Campbell's daughter.
Yeah. And then there's Graham Burton, Wes Ruston, Glenn Higgins.
Greg Higgins.
On bass.
Greg
Higgins on bass, yeah. That's right. And Charles Lazar.
On bass as well.
Bass also, yeah.
Very nice bassist.
And, there's quite a number.
Lovely.
Number of them.
So, please do get your copy of Jazz at the Winchester Mansions, either at the Mansions itself or at Kaleidoscope Jazz Cafe. And I'd like to say big thank you to Maurice Gawronsky as his phone rings. Thanks, Maurice.
Thanks, Glenn.